Hello there and welcome back. My name is Fotios.
And I'm Reese, and this is the Game Corp.
And today we're reviewing Age of Comics: The Golden Years. Age of Comics is a 1 to 4 player game designed by Giacomo Cimini and Sónia Gonçalves and published by Lirius Games.
In Age of Comics, you are comic designers, producers, artists, trying to produce different genres of art for graphic novels. You are trying to collect fan bases, sell those comics for the most amount of money, and you can even be brutal and rip off other people's different comics.
It's a very nice setting because, it takes place in the golden age of comics, and you are also controlling your sellers, which are going around Manhattan in an attempt to gain the biggest fan base.
So in the game, you have three different publishers, I believe is the word for them, that you send out because it's a worker placement. The board is split up into several areas where each of the actions you can go a limited amount of times based on the player count. Those actions are to produce new ideas, get new artists, get new concepts for storylines, even go out and get some new contracts around Manhattan, something you alluded to just now. You send out workers to the corners, try and sell your contracts for those to sell them to the vendors, to sell to others, to create a new fan base. When you're trying to collect ideas, I alluded to earlier on that you can rip off other people's, but they've had to have produced a comic already to rip that off. It doesn't come with a fan base already, so you really have to work really hard to establish more of a fan base than the original, which makes sense.
There are two cool aspects of this worker placement aspect of the game. One is that if you go first in a particular space, you have the most benefits, and this reminds me of other games like Barrage, for instance. And the other cool aspect is that once you have published a few comics, I think it's the second and third comic of yours, you can place a cube out to make these actions even stronger. So when you go to a particular action, you can take the extra bit because you have upgraded the action. But you only have the option to do this in 2 of the 5 basic actions of the game. So you have every time you have to select the most profitable actions for you.
Yeah, 100%. I think when you take the cubes off, the decision space of where you want to boost the specific actions is where it actually brings a little bit more asymmetry to your play style from the others, and it brings a bit more complexity because it is a very basic worker placement game, to be fair.
Also, another aspect of the game is that you publish comics, but these comics comes in different genres. There are 6 genres in the base game, but you also have the army expansion, mini module, and of course, when you go and hire artists or writers, they are specialized in different genres. So if you make the correct selections and you match them up properly for a particular genre, then this potentially will give you the most benefits.
Yeah, because the fan base is based on the quality, obviously, of the stories they're telling. And of course, if you're writing a romance graphic novel, comic, you will want someone who's specialized in romance to write that for you, and same for the artist. You can get other writers, but the fame isn't going to be there, the fan base isn't going to be there. But the beauty of this game is that you can actually swap out the artists and the writers later on and hire new, more qualified, and you can even increase the qualification of your writers.
Swapping is actually one of the upgraded actions when you hire, right? So you cannot do it by default unless you have upgraded the hire action. And of course, if your publishing company specializes in a particular genre of games, then you get also the mastery tokens. If you have, let's say, the most of the romance published across the table, or the most of the crime, or the most of the horror, then you have these mastery tokens, which improve even more your fan base whenever you publish a new one of this type, but also give you victory points at the end of the game.
Yeah, and it affects obviously existing comics because you're known to have that kind of speciality in that genre. But the beauty of it is, with worker placement and stuff like that, you can take away that mastery from someone else. If you are focusing on the romance, for example, or the sci-fi over someone else, you can take that away from them and boost your fan base over theirs.
So that is the overall concept of the game and how the game plays. Now, when it comes to replayability of the game, what would you say? Is it strong in this aspect?
So
you've played more than me.
Yeah, I've played a lot with you. And I think the replayability is there because there's so many modules that you can add to the game as well. But also what I've found is because you're limited on the actions that you can modify or increase, each game you might try a different avenue of
Yes,
play.
yes.
I like the bonus action that gives hype to new titles that are coming up, for example. But I've played where I've not even touched that action before and gone on to the other actions and boosted them instead, just to see what the variability is of gameplay wise. So there is a bit of replayability there. It is a lot lighter than a lot of other games, though, that I own personally and that you have. So it's not something that would come out a lot. So I'd say if you are into your heavy games but want something that's got a bit of decision space but is a lighter decision space, then it's not going to come out that often, but enough. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it is lighter, I would agree to that, but it's also quite thematic.
Oh, it's
I would
very
say.
thematic, yeah.
I mean, for a Euro worker placement game, I think the theme comes out nicely.
Yes.
And if I may come back to the replayability aspect, I really like the module with the objective cards that you get at the beginning of the, because this also gives you a direction where you want to go, and a particular card may change your game completely.
And this is quite interesting because that's the only module I haven't tried, and that's because my personal play style is I like to try and experiment with what's currently there, whereas I think the objectives obviously give you more of a goal to do. So I'd maybe do that for someone who's not so much a gamer.
Yeah.
But the fact that you can add those in later and add that, and so talking about replayability with the other modules, you discussed the war module, and what's really fun about the war module is it adds another genre of comic to actually produce. But it also adds a little rule difference, but it's only for the one round, where when the war is taking place, there is less writers and less artists to hire because they're off being conscripted to war, right? So there's less people there. And I think that makes that round then quite like, we need to get those people quick. And it makes them more expensive. So that is really nice. It adds something. There is another one which produces a double genre, so like a romance superhero kind of novel. I haven't played with that one either, but yeah, the fact that I've not felt that I've needed to yet play with those, other than the war one just for interest's sake, shows that I can still play the game with what's in the box.
Equally though, even if the game comes with 6 different genres of comics, or 7 with a military token, whatever it is, military war comics, it doesn't make any difference in the game style if you go for horror or if you go for romance, right? It really depends on the cards you draw and the cards that are available there.
Yeah, the only reason it matters to have the 6th is obviously there's more diversification, and you might not rip off someone else. You might just do originals yourself, and they therefore gain kind of a sole fan base on that kind of genre. So it just gives another genre to kind of master, to be fair.
So when it comes to player count, I have played only at 2. And you have played, I think, 3 as well?
2, 3,
and 4.
And 4. Okay. Yeah, I've played it all player counts.
So I enjoyed that too, but I would be interested to hear, what is your optimal player count for this game?
I think I probably enjoyed it best at 3, because it gives a little bit more of the map for Manhattan for competition, and it gives more opportunities for those rip-offs.
Yes, correct.
And it's really fun ripping off someone and creating a really shoddy version of one of their comics, but actually stealing their fan base, and then eventually maybe their mastery as well. So it's like a double whammy for them. It's like, damn you. I quite like the higher play counts just because of the rip-off mechanic, which is a juicy mechanic, but it still plays nicer too.
Lengthwise, I don't think it's the longest of the games, so I think maybe 90 minutes max, I would say, to play a full game, assuming everybody knows the game.
Sure, obviously it'll go up a little bit more with the player count, because there's a bit more decision space there. But yeah, no, it's not a lengthy game, no. It's definitely a medium weight, medium length game.
And it's relatively easy to teach, I would say. I mean, because again, it makes sense from a thematic point of view, everything makes sense. One thing that's a bit more, let's say, difficult to teach is how at the beginning of the round you can upgrade your writers and your artists, and based on if they're specialized or not specialized, you can train them, or one learn from the other.
Yeah, I think trying to explain how you upgrade your personnel
It's the most, yeah.
Yeah, but even that, I think you can thematically explain it as well, though, that if you are of the same genre, you have an understanding of that genre, therefore you learn a little bit easier.
Yes.
Whereas if you're a different genre, you're going to find it a bit more difficult and you have to pay a little bit more to actually get that. So I think you can still thematically describe it and explain it, so yeah, not too bad. I've got the deluxe version, which is gorgeous.
Edition. The collector's
edition. So for production-wise, all I can say is, because those metal tokens, the coins, the mastery tokens, they're just glorious. They are so not needed. But there's just something nice about a heavy mastery metal token. It's like coins, right? It just feels good in your hand, or when you pick it up and you gain it, and you're like, yes, I could show that off.
And of course, everything that you would expect from a deluxe edition, like, silk printed meeples, publishers that is, nice coins, as you said, nice tokens, nice player boards. And one thing that you haven't really touched upon so much, I think the art, at least from my style, is very beautiful. It's retro comic arts.
Yeah, it's of the time. It's of the golden years time. They've gone for that art, which makes perfect sense, right? Again, thematically makes sense.
Shall we go for yes and nays?
Yep.
Shall we start with yays?
Yays.
Yays, okay.
Yays.
Go for it. What's your first yay of the game?
My first yay of the game, I would say it's that avenue of choice.
For the upgraded actions.
Of how you go for those upgraded actions.
Makes sense.
I really like that you can mix up game from game and try a different method. I had one person who upgraded one of the actions which allows you to just create ideas and then spend those ideas to gain points and to increase your fan base, because you're chucking a lot of ideas into new storylines, and that's all he kind of did. He was like, I want to try this, and he did well. He didn't do brilliantly, because you need to diversify a little bit in your tactics, but he still did well, and it shows that, there's not just the one avenue of points. So yeah, that would be for me.
For me, the first EA would be around, the thematic integration within the game. Everything to me makes sense, from hiring the artists and the writers, to publishing, to selling, to increasing your fan base. Fan base decreases at the end of every round because, naturally declines. The people lose interest in what you're doing. The rip-offs are also quite thematic.
Yeah.
So for me, the first yay is the theme integration in the game.
And I just repeat all of that as a yay. It's just beautiful. I would say, as you discussed, the kind of weight of the game, though, is such that because it lends itself to such good thematics, I can play with or teach non-gamers easily enough. Mm-hmm. And that is a good yay, because it gives me enough decision and thought space for someone who does like the heavier side of games to still enjoy it and still be challenged by someone who is not so much into gaming. And I think you need something like that in your collection, something that's not so heavy that you can bring out, but gives you enough decision space that makes you feel happy about what you've done throughout that game. Yeah, so that would be something for me for EA.
The last EA for me would be a combination of production and art, to be honest with you. We already discussed about this in detail, but yeah, I mean, both of them are very nice, very nicely made. So yeah, that is...
Yeah, and we got to point out as well, this is Lirius Games' first produced game. This is something that they've only just produced. They're producing another follow-up game called, I think it's Traveling Italy or something like that. Somewhere down here will be the name of that, I'm sure. But yeah, they're producing their second game, but this is their first one, and I think they've knocked it out of the park for their first production,
How about nays? Any negative points of the game?
Do you know what, right? It is really hard to give anything negative to this game. The only thing I could say then is, and this is again based on me as a player, right, is I wish there was an advanced mode. Just something a little bit more beefy with the economy.
I do agree with that, because if, let's say, you and I would predominantly go for heavy games, would like to play something worker placement, potentially would pick something else from the shelf.
And that's the thing, it depends on your audience, right? Like I said, this game is perfect for my medium-light kind of players, but not as much for my heavier, although we would maybe probably do it as like a filler just before a big one. But if it did have something a bit more advanced and something a bit more meaty to the decision space of the economy of the comics, I think it would be a really good first choice for us because we do love the thematics, right?
Yeah, correct. One small name for me is about the setup and the fact that it's a bit tedious for this particular game. Like, I would expect this kind of setup for a more heavier game, if you mean, like a Lacerda game or something along these lines.
Yeah.
But for this particular game, I think as a balance of its weight and its length of play, I think the setup is a bit tedious.
Yeah, it could take a little bit of time to do that. I don't find it too bad, but yeah, I suppose when we're trying to find nays, it's not a bad one, right? So recommendations you usually do on this channel?
Yeah, other game recommendations, like if you like this, you may like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which one would you say?
So for me, if we're looking at a thematic worker placement game with a bit of brutality, Yido, which is the feudal Japan game where you're kind of your own house, your own clan, and you're building a clan to do specific missions, and thematically everything that you do for that mission ties into the actions that you take. So maybe Yido then, and it's a little bit heavier than this, I'd say.
For me, my game recommendation would be Cotton Club, which is a small game. It's quite thematic. It's, I would say, kind of the same era, right? Even, but Cotton Club is like more like a prohibition era, like alcohol, jazz clubs and stuff like that. It's a small box game by Looping Games. It has worker placement, and again with the same perspective. Like if you go to the spot first, you get the most benefit of that spot.
Yeah.
And also the integration of the theme, I think, also is quite good in Cotton Club. Cotton Club, the full title is 1923. Cotton Club, yes.
Yeah, that's right. A very nice game, very nice game. I recently played it. Yeah, very good.
Alright, so this was our review video for Age of Comics. Alright, this was our review video for Age of Comics, The Golden Years. Thank you so much for watching.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.